Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. And it's the 450th episode. My guest this week is Sean Gunn, an actor you may know from The Specials, The Belko Experiment, The Terminal List, dozens of other things really. He played Kirk Gleason on Gilmore Girls, and these days he's probably best known for his work on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, where he appears as the perpetually perplexed Ravager Kraglin and disappears into the role of Rocket, which he plays in motion capture. And you can see him, and not see him, in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in theaters everywhere right now. Sean chose Nashville, Robert Altman's sprawling 1975 drama about the entangled lives of several dozen people in Nashville, Tennessee, in the days leading up to a benefit concert for presidential candidate Hal Philip Walker. There's music, there's drama, there's sex and violence, there's more music, there's more everything. With a massive cast that includes Karen Black, Ronnie Blakely, Keith Carradine, Geraldine Chaplin, Shelley Duvall, Henry Gibson, Scott Glenn, Barbara Harris, Michael Murphy, Lily Tomlin, and Jeff Goldblum, it's a bustling, chaotic, overstuffed delight, capturing a specific moment in American cultural history and shining a light on literally everything that's coming next. How do you cover a 3-hour masterpiece in a half-hour recording window? You're about to find out. This is Someone Else's Movie.
First of all, I wanted to choose a movie that I love, of course. And I wanted to choose a movie that I've seen enough times that I feel like I could at least, I don't know about speak about it intelligently, but as intelligently as I can, at least. And something that that sort of has stuck with me for whatever reason. I've seen Nashville a number of times, and I should sort of start by saying that the little block of Altman movies in the first half of the 70s are among my favorite movies of all time, particularly California Split and The Long Goodbye and McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Thieves Like Us and Nashville, MASH. I always even forget some, but that little run of movies there, I just think is one of the most remarkable runs of storytelling of any auteur, really ever, but certainly in the 20th century. And I just think that all those movies are so unique. Unfortunately, we don't get to see as many movies like that anymore. There's not as any, there's not enough movies like that. But anyway, I'll sort of stop it there. That Nashville sticks out to me just because of its tremendous scope and the degree of difficulty.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it, actually, because watching it now, I did an episode of a friend's podcast, Black Hole Films, on it just before the pandemic, because we saw it, we all watched it together, and it was my fifth or sixth time through it, I guess. Yeah. And watching the way he juggles storylines and literally integrates them and makes sure that we can understand where we are in the city, where we are in the story. Even there's a point around 2 hours in where the distance between characters is important briefly, just as, will someone make it to the airport and back? And it's almost effortless. There's no need to be, you don't have to learn the visual geography, the confidence in the cinematography and the editing, especially given, like the long takes and the standing zooms and just the sheer breadth of activity.
Yeah.
And then you factor in the fact that there are thousands of people in any given shot. Like, it's teeming with extras, and the coordination of that is a nightmare.
It's so much. And to tell everyone's story in a way that it feels like there's some sort of it feels like everyone has their own voice. All of the main characters, and I think there's 22 of them, have their own voice, and they each have their own story told in a unique way. And it's even to me, the crazier thing is that I remember before I saw it, somebody said to me, "Oh, it's unbelievable. There's 22 main characters, and none of them is really any bigger than the other." And you watch it, and that's so true. It's like I think you could probably say that from a plot perspective, Ronnie Blakely's character, Barbara Jean, is sort of the most important character thematically, but she doesn't. Her role isn't any bigger than any of the other actors' roles are.
Yeah, I mean, she's missing from the second act. She gets hospitalized briefly.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no one is really, there's no lead character in the movie. It's like an entire I don't even I don't know what the word for it is, but it's all intricately, it's an intricately woven piece of fabric. It's
tapestry,
really,
right? That's what I was thinking of. It's and in the middle of all of it, there's room to create theories about the characters that don't really factor, like Shelley Duvall and Jeff Goldblum, who are newly arrived scenesters, I think is the way we're supposed to, like, we actually watch Martha arrive, but Tricycle Man or whatever he is, he's like, he could be the devil, he could be an angel. He has no dialogue and all the presence in the world. And of course, because now it's Jeff Goldblum, it's like, what the hell is Jeff Goldblum doing in this movie?
It's so wild. I love it when you see when Jeff Goldblum pops up in like
Annie Hall,
the Right Stuff, or and these movies where it's like, wait, what? Goldblum got that on his resume too? And Nashville is almost the best example of that.
I forget he's in it every time. I forget it's him because he doesn't speak, right? Like, you don't have that characteristic thing. And Altman just weaves him into the fabric of it. I came to it a little bit late. I didn't see it until I was in my 20s because it would look like garbage on VHS, and I waited to see it in the theater. But when did you first see it? You were not old enough to have caught it on the first round.
No, I'm not quite old enough, but I'm the youngest of 6. Okay. And so I would get
cross-contamination.
Just get hand-me-downs in terms of clothes. I also got them in movies and music and all sorts of pop culture. So I remember that when my brother Brian was in college, he was studying film closely, and we were all big movie buffs in my family. But he just went on a little kick where he dove into Altman movies, and I'd never seen an Altman film. I remember I knew films well enough that there was a book about the great auteurs of the 70s, and I know that it was like Scorsese and Coppola and Altman, and I imagine Hal Ashby, and I'm trying to think who else would be in that list, but maybe even Spielberg, a bunch of white dudes for sure. But I remember Altman was the one who I didn't know at all. He was just the one whose movies I kind of came to last. But even still, I think when I was probably around 15, my brother was like, "You got to see Nashville. It's one of the greatest movies ever made." And I saw it for the first time then. So that's 34 years ago, probably I saw it. And I'm sure I've seen it at least a dozen times.
Yeah. It's weird that a film that's so laden with meaning, and, it's a statement on America post-Vietnam. It's a statement, or like Vietnam was actively ending. The Watergate hearings were still going on. It was all still happening.
Yeah.
But that it's sort of, it presages gun culture and the whole northern southern divide on pop culture, and it's still comfort food. That's what really surprises me, is how easy it is. It's literally the title of the Oscar-winning song, but is so easy to just sink into it. That's
exactly. I agree completely with that. That it's that there's all these themes running throughout the film. If you want to use it as a political statement, you can, or corruption or guns, as you say. I would even add too that it presages sort of modern like social media and things like that, and in all of how everybody's getting recorded all the time, and they're constantly obsessed with how they're going to be perceived when they're being watched and when they're being recorded, which is a very modern theme. And yet, as you say, you don't have to really care about any of that if you don't want to. If you want to just watch the movie and meet all these interesting characters and get into the story of these characters and what happens to them, it completely works on that level as well. It's able to do both things, and that's why that's the main, that's the meat right there. If you can do both those things at once, I think you're pretty close to a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think it's the closest an American filmmaker has ever come to something like The Rules of the Game, where everyone has their reasons. It's simplistic and reductive, but that really is it. There's no one in the film that isn't acting out of self-interest. Even people who, at the end, oh my God, I'm blanking on the character's name. When Winifred grabs the mic and takes the stage, it's not an Altamont moment. She's not trying to calm the crowd. Really, this is her chance, right?
No, I know she's she in somewhat. I mean, first of all, what a transcendent moment it is that when she finally gets to sing and she just like tears the roof off the. I mean, it's like that. It's such a glorious moment, and it's so sad at the same time. But how it's so great when she gets up and sings at the end. But yeah, she's not. There's almost something altruistic about that. She's not just trying to be seen. It's like her. It's the best part of being an artist when you're giving something of yourself. I think the same is true for Haven Hamilton, who's the Henry Gibson character, who we've seen all along. He's got these political aspirations, and he seems pretty pompous. He's a generally unlikable character, but at the very end of the movie, when he gets shot himself, and all he cares about is making sure that everyone else is okay. He's not he in that moment, he's not obsessed with himself and what's going on in his own life. It's like a great little mini redemption moment. And the movie is littered with all kinds of stuff like that.
And of course, it's an assassination attempt, which is prefiguring Taxi Driver and Reagan and all these, like,
right.
It's all coming. That's what I mean. Like, in the moment, it feels, well, watching it feels like, for all the rustic, folksy affectation, because you're seeing an exaggerated version of Southern culture, right? Like, this is performance, especially on stage. The songs are old and of questionable origin, and the new songs are challenging, the history of American music by pushing back against it. And generally the new songs are either pastiches or something like I'm Easy, which is just a confessional. Like, Tom Frank is just trying to launch himself by singing about the truth, about his, like, being an actual truth teller, and it makes him a singer-songwriter, in today's parlance. But it's not predicting the future. It's so progressive in its presentation. Like, it's aware of all of the artifice. And that's like, that was always Altman's greatest strength, was kind of cutting through the pretense that people put up. Think about The Long Goodbye, where, we immediately know who the villains are because they're just the most loathsome people, but they carry themselves like swells because they have money to protect them. Or MASH, which is a straight up campus comedy just transposed into the Korean War, slobs and snobs and all that. But Nashville is the one. It's the outlier in his work because its vision is so. I don't even have a word for it. I would call it idealism, and from a filmmaker who was very often a raging cynic. And this one doesn't feel so confident about America, but it feels good about Americans, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like the individuals are going to say that.
I think so too, and it is like that's when Altman is at his best. I think is when he's being really sort of. There's something really cynical about the way that the people view their world that they live in, but it's not cynical about the people themselves. And that they're all. It's like anybody. They all want something, and they want something better for themselves. And it's really just it's a magic trick in a way. I think I don't know how Altman pulled it off. I don't know how he pulled those things off, where he takes this movie that is about as ambitious as anything you'll see, and it flows so easily. It's so easy. It seems in one way, it's this epic, nominated for all these Oscars and things like that. And in another, it seems like a movie that he got a bunch of his friends in a Super 8 and made in a weekend or something like that. It's amazing.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my twice-weekly newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about Criterion's new editions of Targets and Petit Maman, Aero Video's release of the Lost John Woo action or Hand of Death, and Film Movement's restoration of Shohei Mimura's Warm Water Under a Red Bridge, and also Cocaine Bear, Creed 3, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Twitter account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. This is exactly the right time to introduce Joan Tewksbury, who we hadn't mentioned, but who, as the screenwriter, as the sole credited screenwriter, is the architect, literally the blueprint of this thing. And her work with Altman specifically has this generous heart that doesn't always appear in his other, like Thieves Like Us, for example, which is a Depression era movie that isn't cynical and is like kind of weirdly optimistic, even though everyone is having the worst possible time. That's her, I think. And here she pulls the same thing out of the music industry in Nashville. Yeah.
And I know that I know that Altman did what he usually did at that time, which was he took the script and used it as a blueprint, sort of for the scenes. But what a magnificent way to make movies. It's like nowadays you can't. It's almost hard to write an original screenplay, and you can't write a big budget movie that's not based on some other kind of IP. Just about, and unless you're one of very few people in Hollywood. But how excellent that Joan Tewksbury just had an idea to make a movie set in Nashville. And so Altman thought that was a pretty good idea too. So he just sent her to Nashville for a few months to kind of like get a lay of the land and get some sense of what about the city would be interesting as a set piece. And then she just started writing and they start to put it together. And I believe the Geraldine Chaplin character, Opal, is sort of loosely based on Joan Tewksbury, although I don't know how flattering Joan would find that, considering Opal's a bit of a I don't know, she's a bit of a wild card, but yeah, and the fact that she's this kind of outsider coming in and getting the lay of the land, it's cool.
Yeah, her basically her tour notes become the structure, as I understand it, which again is incomprehensible to me because following one person through one weekend would be difficult enough, but she was there for months.
Yeah. And we also, as you're talking about the writing of the film, it's important to point out that, that all of the songs, which are such a massive portion, if you add the performances of the songs, if you add that up, I think it's almost an hour of the movie is just the songs. And
I wouldn't be surprised.
And they, and a lot, in most cases, the actors wrote their own songs that they were performing, or a couple of the actors wrote multiple songs for other people. And again, what a magnificent way to tell a story collaboratively with, from the writer to the filmmaker to the actors, for them to be able to kind of dig in and understand what their characters would sing about. And that part of the participation, again, is really unique and really excellent.
Every time I watch it, I try to figure out if Hal Philip Walker's monologues are songs themselves, like if they function the same way. They don't move the plot forward exactly, but they create the context. And after a while, it sounds like the music that we're hearing is pushing against the messaging. Like the nativism, the subtle nativism that's coming out there, because he sounds like a Nixon guy who's learned to be a little more smooth. It's hard to tell. I mean, he's clearly right wing, but he also doesn't say anything. Like there's no content in most of it.
No, it's a lot of word salad. His monologues, and I remember, I remember in I guess it would have been 1992 when Ross Perot came around for the first time. I remember talking to my brother and being like, "Is Ross Perot Hal Philip Walker?" There's some. He wasn't quite as right wing, but there's definitely some of that folksy populism that was very similar between those two characters. Something eerie about that guy, about Walker.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, the fact that we never see him is just genius because he's like a cloud, and the van keeps showing up. The van and Tricycle Man do cross paths a couple of times. And some organizational aspect of my brain is trying to figure out, does that mean something? Is it there? Like when they are together, does something happen? Is it an angel on a shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder? Or is it just, something that Altman thinks is funny, this tiny guy on a bicycle versus a giant truck that won't stop yelling?
Yeah, I don't know what it means, if there's some sort of larger meaning, or if it's just like that that echo of politics, that sort of annoying background noise of politics is inescapable. Like it's going to find you wherever you are,
Yeah, literally white noise in this case.
Right.
But then you've got people singing quiet little songs about love and trust and the stuff that Walker's just not talking about. I mean, I don't want to, we only have so much time, but I don't want to leave out Keith Carradine, who, I mean, he's wonderful. He's so good at suggesting the faults and shortcomings of Tom, but at the same time, you understand you get why he's the star. You get why he is the center of this trio that's broken up, and why he has to go solo. There's an entire arc of his life that shows up before it happened before the movie started. He shows up carrying it, and he does it so casually that it's almost remarkable. David Carradine makes Bound for Glory the following year, and is so good at disappearing into Woody Guthrie that I briefly forgot that it wasn't Keith, because in my head, like, Keith is the singer, David Carradine didn't do that. And then of course, it's just a different kind of acting. But that performance, he wins the Oscar for the song, which I find fascinating. But I think it probably is the greatest work he's ever done. It's just incredible.
Yeah, he's so good in those. And I mean, I love him in those. I love him in Thieves Like Us, and I love him in McCabe and Mrs. Miller as well. Sure. He's so good at that kind of, and those roles are so different. Oh my God. Yeah. So if you watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and it's just like this aw shucks young, same thing in Thieves Like Us, is like really sort of naive guy. And then you see the darkness in Tom and in Nashville. Oh my God, what range that guy shows. But that song, I'm Easy, is a magnificent work, and the way to hear it is the way he performs it in the movie. They tweaked it and did a version that ended up on the radio, but it sounds
the single,
and it just kind of misses the magic of seeing it in the actual movie. But that scene where he's singing that song, another great example of what the movie manages, of the magic trick that the movie manages to pull off, is that you tell the scene is the song, so you Altman's able to tell the entire story of what's going on with those 3 or 4 different women who are there, who all think that he's singing to them, and he tells it with the lyrics and with what we're looking at, so that you don't need any sort of other scene there, that it's already telling the story that needs to be told just through the music and the visuals, and it's just perfect. That's one of the best. I think that's one of the great scenes in like 70s cinema period.
I wonder if it's because it makes us complicit, like because we're being shown something that no other character, Tom knows, but none of the women does. And we get to know that with him. Like we're sharing that secret with the character and the singer, and that puts us in a position of not power exactly, but we're heightened, or like our connection to the, if you don't connect to the movie in that moment, the movie has lost you. And the placement of it in the film is at such a point where we've been drifting along with it, with the movie in its wake, just sort of following it. And then all of a sudden you're trapped in this intimate space and you know something and you see the secret play out.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in on the secret. It's really great. And in some ways you could probably say that it's possible that Lily Tomlin's character, Linnea, is she might be in on the secret too. It's like she knows she's
aware of something.
Doesn't know everything, but she knows she's wiser than those other than the other possible love interests are that are there in the club. She's wiser than they are, and so we also relate to her in that way. I agree with you. If you get to that point in the movie and you think you're just hearing another song and you're not understanding everything that's going on, I don't think the movie's probably not for you.
Oh, you can't save everybody, but
yeah.
Oh my God, it's so much fun to watch that film with an audience and feel it play people.
You know, I've never seen it in a theater.
Oh wow, I've seen it twice, I think.
I wanted to. I was in Chicago when they did an Altman retrospective in a theater, and I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to see that one. I saw Come Back to the Five and Dime and on the big screen, and
that'd be nice.
And a couple others. I don't know if you know California Split, but California Split is about my damn near my favorite movie of all time. And full disclosure, I talked about it on a different podcast, so that's the reason I didn't choose. I didn't choose that one.
No, but I appreciate that. It's happened a couple of times where people have done the same thing on other shows, and it's just like, I know you have a tight 20, but come on.
Yeah, no, but there's so many. Wait, that's an interesting thing about choosing a movie for this show is that, and you must feel like you can talk about any film with anybody, particularly if they're really into it. But I kind of had a hard time thinking about, because as much as there are hundreds of movies that I love, there's very few that I love enough to just talk about for a good long chunk of time. I mean, it's like I guess I could talk about Jaws or E.T. or one of the like classics of all time. You can, but it would be hard for me to know what I could say that hasn't. I don't know.
No, that's a thing that comes up a lot. People get in their own heads about what they could possibly contribute. And
right.
The point is, I want to know how it affects you and why it means something to you. So it always comes around and it always works. But yeah, it's great when it's something that people feel they need to talk about.
Yeah. And I think that it's just to even sort of answer that for myself about Nashville, a lot of it for me is just I've always come at acting from the point of view that, that you shouldn't be an actor if you think that you're special. You should be an actor if you think other people are special. And that the whole idea that you lose yourself in trying to tell someone else's story. And that for me as a performer, that I would be able to maybe understand more about the human condition or more about the people that I'm sharing the planet with, through my work. Like that's what appeals to me about doing, about just the doing of it and having this job that I have. And so there's something about how like Altman's light touch with characters that I'm always drawn to, that I want to see how is he doing this so subtle, and he gets such magnificent performances out of people consistently all the time. It's all, you can watch Nashville and some of the people in that movie aren't even really actors or aren't even or barely had much of a career beyond what we see of them. And yet it almost looks like you're watching a documentary at times. It's all so truthful. And so I don't know, something about being truthful about what people are like, not being overly cynical and not being overly optimistic, but just trying to be as truthful as possible about humans and the human condition. That's what this movie really does for me when I watch it. It reminds me of how that can be done beautifully.
I've always believed that people get into acting either because they're intensely curious about other people or because they desperately don't want to be themselves. Like they need to be somebody else for a little while. And for the former, it absolutely makes sense that you'd be drawn to Altman because that's all he does. Is he's an observant director. Danny Boyle once said that his thing is to treat characters rather, as specimens and follow them and watch them and see if they come apart. But Altman, I don't know that he roots for that. I think he knows the system will grind them down, but he wants to see them survive. He wants to see how they navigate that world. Like this is almost an anthropological study in its scale. You're looking at a society, you're looking at an entire town, hence the title, but everybody's singing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's true. It is one of those movies that's kind of, it's kind of about everything, to some degree, which, and if you're, if you're a young filmmaker, my advice to you is don't try to make a movie that's about everything. Let yourself find that over time. But I don't think Altman is, I don't know that he is trying to make a movie about everything. It's just kind of it's just kind of where he ends up landing.
Yeah. He leaves room for everything. That's his thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put.
My thanks to Sean Gunn, who you can see playing Kraglin and Rocket in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in theaters everywhere right now. Thanks also to Joelle Onokuberi. She knows what she did. You can find Sean on Twitter at Sean Gunn, all one word, and you can find Nashville on Blu-ray and DVD in the Criterion Collection and in a Paramount Home Entertainment edition as well. It's also available to rent or buy on various VOD platforms. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next week.